Nobody told them they were different. They figured it out the way they figured out most things. By noticing something that didn't quite add up. The way other kids in the class looked confused by things that already made sense before the teacher finished explaining. The way conversations moved at a pace that felt slightly too slow, like watching a film buffering on a screen that could play it much faster. The way they'd finish thinking something through and then wait, quietly, for everyone else to arrive at the same place. If you've spent your life processing the world at a speed most people around you don't, this video is going to describe things you've probably never heard said out loud. Stay till the end, because the psychology of extremely high intelligence is almost nothing like what most people assume it is. Let's start with what high IQ actually means, because popular culture has built an image of it that gets almost everything wrong. The image is the eccentric genius. Socially awkward, probably wearing the same thing every day, brilliant at one narrow thing, lost in everything else. Rain Man, Sherlock Holmes. The person who can calculate square roots in their head but can't read a room. The research tells a different story. Psychologist Lewis Terman conducted one of the longest longitudinal studies in history, following gifted children across their entire lives. And what he found dismantled the genius stereotype in ways that are still being absorbed. High IQ individuals were not, as a group, socially deficient. They were not, as a group, physically weak or emotionally fragile. In many respects, they were healthier, more socially capable, and more adaptive than average. But they did have something else. Something that doesn't fit neatly into either the genius stereotype or its opposite. And it's the thing worth actually understanding. Let's start with what researchers call overexcitabilities. Polish psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski identified 5 domains in which intellectually gifted individuals tend to experience the world with significantly greater intensity than others: intellectual, psychomotor, sensory, imaginational, and emotional. The intellectual one people expect, the constant need to know why, the compulsive following of one idea into another and another until it's 3 in the morning and you've been reading about the history of something you never planned to think about and you're genuinely not sure how you got there. The discomfort of unanswered questions that most people let go of without noticing. The restlessness that arrives when the conversation stays on the surface too long. But the emotional one surprises people. Research consistently finds that extremely high IQ individuals often experience emotional intensity at an equally elevated level. They feel things with unusual depth. They notice subtleties in social situations that others miss entirely. They can be moved by things that seem disproportionately small to the people around them. A piece of music, a line in a book, the specific quality of light at a certain time of day. This is not weakness. This is the same sensitivity that makes the mind sharp, also making everything else louder. Now here's the part that tends to land uncomfortably. High intelligence doesn't protect you from anything you might assume it protects you from. It doesn't make decisions easier. In many cases, it makes them harder. Because a mind that can model multiple futures simultaneously is also a mind that has to live inside the uncertainty of all of them at once. You can see exactly what could go wrong in specific, detailed, logical sequence. And that same analytical capacity that solves problems also builds very convincing cases for why certain things will fail, including yourself. Research from psychologist Piers Worth and others has found that high IQ individuals report higher rates of existential worry, rumination, and what psychologists call overanalysis. Not because they're more neurotic by nature, because the machinery that processes information deeply processes threats deeply too. The same engine runs everything. There's something else that doesn't get talked about enough. The experience of intellectual loneliness. Not social loneliness in the conventional sense, something more specific than that. The loneliness of having an internal world that moves faster and goes deeper than most conversations are built to accommodate. Of editing yourself in real time because the full thought, expressed at full speed with full complexity, tends to lose people somewhere in the middle. Of finding that the conversations you actually want to have don't happen very often. Psychologists who work with high IQ individuals frequently note a specific pattern. The person who is perfectly capable socially, who is warm and engaging and liked by the people around them, but who comes home at the end of the day with a particular kind of fatigue. Not the fatigue of too much stimulation, the fatigue of sustained self-editing, of running a version of yourself that fits the speed of the room rather than the speed of your actual mind. That gap between what's happening internally and what gets expressed is one of the quietest sources of exhaustion in people with extremely high intelligence. Pause here for a second, because this is the part that tends to either resonate completely or not at all. High IQ doesn't feel like a superpower from the inside. It feels like a particular set of constraints wearing a particular set of capabilities. The same mind that grasps things quickly also gets bored quickly. The same mind that thinks several steps ahead also struggles to stay present in the step that's actually happening. The same mind that can hold enormous complexity can also make something simple genuinely difficult, because simple answers stop feeling satisfying and every question starts growing more dimensions the longer you look at it. Researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who spent decades studying optimal experience, found that flow states, those moments of complete absorption where time disappears and everything clicks, require a specific balance between the challenge of a task and the skill level of the person doing it. Too easy, and the mind wanders. Too hard, and anxiety takes over. For people with extremely high intelligence, the window for that balance is narrower and harder to hit in ordinary life. Most daily tasks, most conversations, most professional environments aren't calibrated to that level, which means the mind is either understimulated and restless or working hard to contain itself so it doesn't run too far ahead of whatever is actually happening. Let's talk about something that very rarely gets addressed honestly: the relationship between high intelligence and self-doubt. The assumption is that being very smart means being very confident. The research suggests something more complicated. Extremely high IQ individuals often report significant imposter syndrome, significant uncertainty about their own worth relative to their abilities, partly because they are aware, more than most people, of exactly how much they don't know. The smarter you are, the more clearly you can see the edges of your own understanding. And those edges, to a mind built for precision, can feel vast. There's a particular kind of self-doubt that comes from knowing exactly what excellent looks like and being able to measure yourself against it in real time. The high IQ individual is often their own most rigorous critic, not because they lack confidence in the conventional sense, but because their standard for what counts as good enough is calibrated to a level that ordinary competence doesn't reach. And here's what makes that especially complicated. The people around them often can't see it. They see someone who handles things easily, who grasps things quickly, who appears unbothered by things that require effort for others. The ease is visible. The internal measurement happening underneath it is not. So what does all of this mean for the people living inside it? It means the exhaustion you feel after conversations that should have been easy is real. The self-editing has a cost, and the cost accumulates. It means the difficulty you have switching off, the mind that keeps running after you've asked it to stop, isn't a flaw. It's the same engine that makes you useful, and it doesn't have an off switch that operates on request. It means the loneliness of the internal world is a legitimate thing worth naming. Not because it can't be managed or won't improve with the right relationships, but because calling it what it is the first step toward actually addressing it, instead of wondering why you feel vaguely disconnected from things that seem to satisfy everyone else. And it means the self-doubt is not evidence that you're wrong about yourself. It's evidence that you're measuring yourself honestly, which is uncomfortable but significantly more useful than the alternative. The mind you were given is not a simple thing to live inside. It never was. The capabilities and the costs came as a package, and nobody who handed it to you included much in the way of instructions for the parts that are harder. But the fact that you've been carrying it this whole time, quietly, often without anyone noticing how much the carrying actually takes, says something about you that the IQ score never quite captures. You've been doing something genuinely difficult, and most people around you have no idea. If this video described you more accurately than you expected, please subscribe. I would genuinely appreciate it.